How has postmodernism affected society's view of Christianity's truth claims?
Yeah, that's interesting because like when I debated at Princeton, the issue was not, is Christianity true? As far as they were concerned, Christianity was disproven hundreds of years ago. I mean, when Darwin came, that was it for Christianity. So the big issue at Princeton, when I debated there, was, is Christianity tolerant? And they would argue that it's not, it's intolerant. So whenever you talk about Christianity in Ivy League schools, they think of the Crusades and the Inquisition. Because of that, Campus Crusade for Christ changed their name to Agape Fellowship at Princeton. So postmodern thought places very little respect for true historical research. So if one branch of Christianity known as Roman Catholicism, and we're Protestants, we're not Roman Catholics, and for various reasons, if one branch took part in the Inquisition, and if the Crusades were mostly a defensive act of the church against invading Muslims, that's really irrelevant, and it's irrelevant that the only governments based on atheism, such as Stalin's Soviet Union and Mao's China, it's irrelevant that they killed over 100 million of their own people during peacetime, which is many times over what occurred during the Inquisition, nominal Christianity at best. Pretty much you choose your own narrative. So you have the gay community has their narrative, and they read all of history through the lenses of their gay narrative. The women's lib community does the same. Civil rights activists who choose to be postmodern do the same. And so when everything's said and done, Christianity gets slammed for being intolerant because we believe there is absolute truth, there is absolute morality, there is only one way to be saved, and that's through Jesus. So we're viewed as being intolerant. Now, the postmodern concept of tolerance is the belief that all beliefs are equally true and all behavior is equally wholesome. Oh, by the way, if you disagree with us, we cannot tolerate you. And now, traditionally, tolerance was viewed as freedom of religion, freedom of speech, something that Christians promote. Those are Christian ideas. Those are biblical ideas. But now, all of a sudden, tolerance is this view that you can't say someone's religion doesn't lead to God. You can't say someone's going to hell if they don't accept Jesus. And so basically in the name of tolerance, the postmodern new tolerance camp is being incredibly intolerant. They can't tolerate anybody who disagrees with them. And this is spread to the point where even supposedly conservative journalists like and reporters such as Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly, who are practicing Roman Catholics, they even at one time referred to Christian leaders as being intolerant and compared them to the Taliban because they taught that salvation's only through Jesus. Now, I think their views have changed over the years because they've gotten closer to some of these evangelical leaders. But it's not intolerant for a Christian to tell a Muslim, you're going to hell if you don't accept Jesus as your Savior. And it's not intolerant for a Muslim to tell a Christian, you're going to hell if you won't submit to Muhammad and the Quran and submit to Allah. What's intolerant is the idea that if you disagree with my views, you should be locked up because you're a bigot. And that's exactly what the New Tolerance postmodern camp is all about. If you believe homosexuality is a sin, you're an intolerant bigot. If you're not for a woman's right to have an abortion, you're an intolerant bigot. And so really the word tolerance has kind of changed over the years. Tolerance, by definition, meant that you would put up with people who disagree with your views. And if they don't commit crimes, you don't want to see them locked up. Now tolerance means if you don't believe everybody's going to heaven, and if you believe there is absolute truth, you're an intolerant bigot. I'll just throw in this one thing. Bertrand Russell said, I'm not a dogmatist, but we have to understand that I need to tell my skeptical friends the dogmatists are wrong because they dogmatically believe something is true. But then he said, but my skeptical friends are wrong because they're dogmatic about their skepticism. They're dogmatic in their view that they should suspend judgment on all things. So Bertrand Russell, the atheist that he was, said that we should play the middle of the road. But if he were alive today, my question to him would be this: are you dogmatic about us playing the middle of the road? If he's not dogmatic, then who cares about what he said? But if he is dogmatic about playing the middle of the road, then it proves my point. To be human is to be dogmatic. If you're human, you're going to be dogmatic about something. So the question should not be, are you dogmatic? Everybody's dogmatic. The postmodernist is dogmatically anti-Christian. Everybody is dogmatic about something. So the question isn't, are you dogmatic? The question is, whatever it is you're dogmatic about, is it true? And is it right or good? And that's where the debate should be. Postmodernism doesn't believe in truth, and absolute morality won't allow for that. And so they act like we gotta lock up these dogmatists. The fact of the matter is, if you're a human being, you're dogmatic. So everybody's dogmatic, and the postmodernists are some of the most dogmatic people I've ever met.
So then how would you suggest that a Christian understanding absolute truths bridges the gap in a witnessing attempt with a postmodern thinking person?
I think you have to understand at the outset, and a lot of my colleagues are not there. A lot of my colleagues are still debating a debate that we lost, not because we didn't have the truth. We have the truth, but it just wasn't popular, so we lost the debate in the 1970s and 1980s. So a lot of my colleagues are fighting a battle that was lost, fighting for a hill that was lost decades ago. Truth does not speak to the postmodernist. And so what you have to do, you have to attack their God. And so the way you attack their God is you have to attack their claim to be tolerant. And I'll give you an example. Ellen Krasel was a friend of mine who was a Christian lady. She ran for governor, and she's very popular in Washington State. Well, her son, Jim Krasel, was on the Human Rights Council. There was another one of my friends, Mick Sheldon, was on there as well, but he got booted off the council. The council was very politically correct. So, very liberal, very politically correct, very postmodern in their thought. So at this point, there were 12 members on the council, and only one was a Christian. All the rest, the other 11, were anti-Christian, and Jim Krasel was the only one left. And he asked me to speak up for him because the four most politically correct individuals of the New Tolerance camp, the postmodern camp, said that Tuesday night, if he didn't resign, if he wasn't kicked off the council, they would resign. And so he asked me to show up and say something for him. And I didn't like going to those meetings because everybody hated me there and stuff. They knew who I was and all. The place seated about 60 people, but there were just as many people standing as there were seated. So there were about 120 people there. A lot of heckling, a lot of yelling going on. Not a whole lot of Christians were represented. And it just happened, I think it was by divine providence, that I was selected. They gave everybody who wanted to speak 2 minutes to speak, and I was selected to go last. And so after everybody spoke, they called my name, and I stood up, and I said, well, I consider myself a very tolerant person. And then everybody started laughing and heckling me. And so I looked around, I waited for everything to get quiet, and I said, as I was saying, I consider myself a very tolerant person. They started laughing and they heckled me again. So I looked down, everything got quiet, and then I looked around a little bit longer, stared at a few people just to let them know, we're going to be here all night, I don't care. But I got 2 minutes and I'm going to use that 2 minutes whether you like it or not. So everything was real quiet, and I said, as I was saying, I consider myself a very tolerant person. And then I looked around and everybody was quiet because they wanted to get out of there that night. But I said, I am so tolerant, and they already considered me a Christian bigot. They knew who I was. I said, I am so tolerant that there are 11 people on this board who hate what I love and love what I hate. And I'm a born-again Christian. I represent 1 of every 3 people in Kitsap County. It's the Kitsap County Human Rights Council. And I said, 11 people that hate what I love and love what I hate. I'm so tolerant, I'm not asking for the resignation of any of those 11 people. Now there's one man, Jim Craswell, who is a born-again Christian who's on this council, who loves what I love and hates what I hate. And so I'm asking the council members to be 1/12 as tolerant as I am, and allow Jim Craswell to remain on the council and continue to speak up for one out of every 3 people in Kitsap County. Thank you. And I sat down, and there was total silence. People had their mouths open and were looking at me, because basically I left them with a position: if they're going to kick me off, if they're going to kick Jim Craswell off the council, they have to acknowledge that they're 1/12 as tolerant as a guy that they have already in print in letters to the editor of the Kitsap Sun, a guy that they have declared to be a narrow-minded Christian bigot. And so they met for 2 minutes, and after the 2 minutes were over, they came up with the 4 politically correct people announced their resignations. So now I'm not saying this is going to prevent any persecution from coming upon Christians in the future and things of that sort. I'm not making any promises, but at least it's an argument that really can't be answered. When we show, Richard Dawkins is acting like we're so intolerant. Well, I don't want to see atheists thrown in prison just because they're atheists, yet he is labeled teaching our children. When we teach our children about God, he's labeled that as child abuse. And last I heard, Richard Dawkins wants to see child abusers in prison. So I think we just need to, instead, the way we approach it, we say, this is a Christian country and we don't allow those things here. And we sound like the narrow-minded bigots that they portray us to be. Instead, I think we need to say, hey, look, you guys won. You control the schools, the universities, the media, but you claim to be tolerant. Can you tolerate me when I preach from the Bible and I believe the Bible is the Word of God? Can you tolerate an elderly lady at my church who doesn't want to rent her home to a gay couple? Or do you only tolerate people who agree with you? Now keep in mind, if you only tolerate people who agree with you, that's the definition of intolerance.